Guide to Maupassant Latin. The question of studying Latin, which has become a tiresome cliché of late, recently stirred a memory from my youth. In those days, I was a student at a private boarding school, the Pension Robineau, in one of our larger provincial towns. The institution was renowned throughout the region for its excellent instruction of the Latin language. For a full 10 years, the students of Pension Robineau had consistently triumphed in every academic contest, whether at the city's imperial lycée or the colleges of the sub-prefectures. The general opinion held that the school's unbroken string of victories was due to a single, humble form master, a Monsieur Pictant, whom everyone simply called Père Pictant. He was one of those elderly, silver-haired men whose exact age is impossible to guess, yet whose life story is clear at a glance. Having entered a school as a form master at the age of 20, with the intention of continuing his own studies to become a licentiate and eventually a doctor of letters, he had become so entrenched in that monotonous existence that he remained in the same post for the rest of his life. Yet his love for Latin never faded. It transformed into a kind of morbid passion. With a persistence bordering on mania, he continued to read, translate, interpret, and comment upon the poets, prose writers, and historians. One day, he conceived the idea of forcing all the pupils in his class to express themselves solely in Latin, and he persisted in this endeavor until they began to speak the language as fluently as their own. He would listen to them, like a conductor listening to his rehearsing musicians, incessantly tapping his ruler on the lectern. Monsieur Lefrère, you have committed a solecism. Have you forgotten a rule? Monsieur Plantel, the construction of your phrase is purely French, and not at all Latin. You must immerse yourself in the spirit of the language. Now listen to me. And what was the result? By the end of the year, the pupils of Pension Robineau had carried off all the prizes for Latin composition, translation, and oratory. The following year, the school's director, a small man, as cunning as an ape, which he also resembled with his comical, grimacing face, ordered the following to be printed on all programs and advertisements, and even painted on the school's signboard. Specialty, Latin Studies. 5 first prizes in competition with 5 lycée classes. 2 honorable mentions in the general competition of the lycées and colleges of France. Pension Robineau celebrated such triumphs for 10 years. My father, seduced by these resounding successes, enrolled me as a day student at this very Pension Robineau, run by the man we nicknamed Robinet or Robinettino, and instructed me to take private lessons with Père Pictant at 5 francs an hour, 2 of which went to the master himself, and 3 to his employer. I was 18 at the time and was taking the philosophy course. Our lessons took place in a small room whose window looked out onto the street. However, it so happened that Père Pictant, instead of conversing with me in Latin as during regular classes, began to confide his troubles to me in French. Having neither family nor friends, the poor wretch grew attached to me and poured out his sorrows. Not once in 10 or 15 years had he spoken heart to heart with anyone. I'm like an oak in the wilderness, he would say. Sic et quercus in solitudine. The other teachers inspired aversion in him. In the town he knew no one, for he had no free time to make acquaintances. Even at night, I am not free, my friend, and that is the hardest part of all. How I dream of a room of my own, where the furniture, the books, all the little things would belong to me alone, and no one would dare touch them. But I have nothing of my own, nothing but my trousers and my coat, not even a mattress or a pillow. I have no corner to call my own, nowhere to seclude myself, except during lessons in this room. Do you understand? A man with neither the right nor the opportunity to be alone with himself, even to think, to reflect, to work, to dream. Ah, my dear boy, a key, a simple key to a door one can lock. That is happiness, the only true happiness in this world. All day, I am in the classroom with those young rascals who are always fidgeting, and at night, with the same scamps in the dormitory where they snore, and I sleep there in full view, at the end of 2 rows of beds belonging to these mischief makers, whom I am obliged to watch over. I am never alone, never. You go out into the street. It's a throng of people, and when you grow tired of walking, you go into a cafe packed to the brim with smokers and billiard players. It is sheer drudgery. I asked him, "Then why don't you try to do something else, Monsieur Pedantic?" He exclaimed, "But what, my friend, what? I am not a cobbler, nor a joiner, nor a hatter, nor a baker, nor a barber. I know only Latin, but I have no diploma that would allow me to charge a high price for lessons. Had I a doctorate, I would get 100 francs for what I now get 100 sous for, and I would probably teach worse, for the title alone would be enough to maintain my reputation." At times he would say to me, "My only respite, dear boy, is these hours I spend with you. Don't worry, you won't lose out. I'll make up for lost time in class and question you twice as strictly as the others." Once, plucking up my courage, I offered him a cigarette. He looked at me with astonishment, then at the door. "But what if someone comes in, my dear?" "Well then, let's smoke by the window," I proposed. And so, leaning on the windowsill, we began to smoke, hiding our cigarettes in the hollow of our cupped hands. Directly opposite us was a laundry, for women in white blouses were guiding heavy, heated irons over spread-out linen, from beneath which rose clouds of steam. Suddenly, another woman emerged from the laundry doorway, carrying a huge basket that bent her frame into an arc under its weight. She was on her way to deliver shirts, handkerchiefs, and sheets to customers. Pausing briefly on the threshold, as if already tired, she raised her eyes, smiled upon noticing our smoke, and with her free hand threw us a mocking, airy kiss. Then she went on her way with a slow, weary gait. She was about 20 years old, no more, petite, slender, with a pale but rather pretty face. Her expression was lively, her tousled hair a whitish blonde, the very picture of a street urchin. Old man Pedantic, moved by the sight, muttered, "What a heavy trade for a woman! It would take a horse's strength to manage it." And he launched into a discourse on the lot of the common people, deeply touched himself. He possessed the enthusiastic heart of a sentimental democrat, and when speaking of the workers' exhausting labor, he put tears into his words and echoed the expressions of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The next day, as we stood again at the window, the same worker, upon spotting us, teasingly thumbed her nose at us with both hands and cheerfully shouted, "Hello there, schoolboys." I tossed her a cigarette, which she promptly lit. The 4 Ironers also rushed to the doorway, reaching out their hands for the spoils. And so, day by day, a friendly rapport grew between the laundress workers and the idlers from the boarding school. It was amusing to watch old man Pedantic. He trembled with fear of being caught, for he risked his position and made timid, comical gestures, just like an actor playing a man in love, to which the women responded with a veritable hail of airy kisses. It was then that a mischievous plan took shape in my head. One day, entering our room, I whispered mysteriously to the old tutor, "Imagine, Monsieur Pedantic, I ran into that little laundress, the one with the basket, and even exchanged a few words with her." He asked, slightly embarrassed by my tone. "And what did she say to you?" "She said, upon my word, she said that she'd taken a liking to you. Truly, I think that she's not indifferent to you." He paled and objected. "Surely, she's simply making fun of me. At my age, it's hardly serious," I remarked with a businesslike air. "Why not? You've aged wonderfully." Seeing that he had taken the bait, I changed the subject. But from that day on, I daily invented stories, claiming I had met the worker again and spoken with her about him. In the end, he believed me and began sending her passionate, expressive kisses through the window. Then, one morning, on my way to the boarding school, I actually did run into her and, without hesitation, approached her as casually as if we'd known each other for 10 years. "Good day, mademoiselle. How are you?" "Very well, sir. Thank you. Would you care for a cigarette?" "Oh, not out on the street. You can smoke it at home." "In that case, yes, please." "Tell me, mademoiselle, you haven't noticed—" "Noticed what, sir?" "The old man, my old teacher." "Old man Picton." "Precisely, old man Picton." "Do you know his name?" "Of course." "So what?" "So, he's head over heels in love with you." She burst into laughter as if mad, and exclaimed, "You're joking." "Not in the slightest. In our lessons, he talks of nothing but you. I'd wager he wants to marry you." She stopped laughing. At the mere thought of marriage, any girl becomes serious. Then she repeated distrustfully, "No, you're pulling my leg. I swear on my honor, it's the absolute truth." She picked up the basket at her feet. "Well then, we shall see," she said, and went on her way. No sooner had I reached the boarding school than I took old man Picton aside. "You must write her a letter. She's infatuated with you." And he wrote a lengthy, tender missive, overflowing with pompous phrases and circumlocutions, metaphors and comparisons, philosophical musings and scholarly gallantry, a genuine masterpiece of comical elegance, which I undertook to deliver to the young woman. She read the letter with the utmost seriousness, her face flushed with excitement, and said quietly, "How beautifully he expresses himself. One can tell he's a learned man. Is it really true that he wishes to marry me?" I confirmed with an air of conviction, "Absolutely. He's completely lost his head over you." "In that case, let him invite me to dine on Flower Island this Sunday." I assured her the invitation would certainly follow. Old man Picton was extraordinarily touched by everything I relayed to him about her. I added for good measure, "She loves you, Monsieur Picton, and I believe she is a respectable girl. To seduce and then abandon her would be a dishonorable deed." "I'm a man of honor, my friend," he replied firmly. To tell the truth, I had no well-considered plan in mind. I merely wanted to play a trick on him, to tease him in a schoolboy fashion, nothing more. I saw how naive the old tutor was, how inexperienced and timid. I amused myself without considering the potential consequences. I was 18 years old and had already gained a reputation at the lycée as a desperate prankster. Thus, it was arranged that old man Picton and I would take a carriage to the Cow's Tail Ferry, meet Angeli there, and I would transfer them to my boat. I was keen on rowing at the time. I was to deliver them to Flower Island, where we intended to dine together. I insisted on accompanying them to fully savor the triumph of my scheme, and the old man, by accepting my plan, merely proved that he had indeed lost his head, for he was risking his position. When we pulled up to the landing where my boat had been tied since morning, I saw on the shore, in the tall grass, or rather, towering above it, a huge red parasol resembling a poppy of monstrous size. Beneath this parasol waited the little laundress, dressed in her Sunday best. I noted with surprise that she was quite pretty, though somewhat pale and graceful despite a touch of commonness in her manners. Old man Picton removed his hat and bowed courteously. She offered him her hand, and for several moments they gazed at each other in silence. Then we settled into the boat, and I took up the oars. They seated themselves side by side on the aft bench. The old man spoke first. "Marvelous weather for a boat trip," she whispered in reply. "Oh, yes." She trailed her hand overboard, her fingers touching the water. A thin, transparent stream, like a blade of glass, followed them, and a quiet splash, a gentle murmur, sounded from astern. At the restaurant, her ease returned. She herself ordered the meal, fried fish, chicken, and salad. Afterward, she led us on a walk around the island, which, it turned out, she knew perfectly well. Her cheerfulness grew. She became playful and even slightly mocking. Not a word was said about love until dessert. I offered champagne, and old man Picton became quite intoxicated. She was also tipsy and began calling him Monsieur Pekingese. In the original, an untranslatable play on words, piquant pricks the tooth, piquenez pecks/pricks the nose. Suddenly he said, "Mademoiselle, has Raoul spoken to you of my feelings?" She suddenly became as serious as a judge. "Yes, sir. And what do you say to that? Such questions are not answered." Gasping with emotion, he continued, "Still, may I hope that I have managed to please you?" She smiled. "Silly, you're very sweet. In a word, mademoiselle, does it not seem to you that someday we might—" She hesitated for a moment, then replied in a trembling voice, "You want to marry me, isn't that so? Otherwise, never, do you hear me, never?" "Yes, mademoiselle." "Well, it's settled then, Monsieur Pekingese." And so it was that this rather frivolous pair, thanks to a schoolboy prankster, decided to marry. Though I must confess I never thought it would turn serious. Perhaps they didn't either. She was suddenly seized by doubt. "But, I haven't a penny to my name." Drunk as a Silenus, he mumbled, "But I have 5,000 francs saved." She exclaimed triumphantly, "Then we can start some kind of business." "What kind of business?" he asked, alarmed. "How should I know? We'll figure out later. With 5,000 francs, the possibilities are endless. You don't want me living with you at the boarding school, do you? Isn't that right?" He hadn't foreseen this and hesitated in confusion. "But what business? It's unseemly. I don't understand anything except Latin." She, for her part, began running through all the trades that seemed suitable to her. "You couldn't become a doctor?" "No, I have no diploma." "Or an apothecary?" "No, not that either." She suddenly let out a joyful squeal. She had found it. "Then let's buy a grocery shop." "Oh, how wonderful. We'll have our own shop. A small one, of course. You can't go far on 5,000. He protested. "No, I cannot be a grocer. I am a person of some standing. I know only Latin." But she poured a full glass of champagne into his mouth, after which he fell silent. We settled back into the boat. The night was pitch black. Nevertheless, I could make out that they were sitting with their arms around each other and had even exchanged a few kisses. Then came the terrible catastrophe. Our prank was discovered, and old man Picton was dismissed from his post. My father, outraged, sent me away to finish my philosophy course at the Pension Robidet. 6 weeks later, I passed my baccalaureate examinations. Then I left for Paris to study law and returned to my hometown only 2 years later. On the corner of Rue Serpent, my attention was caught by a sign that read, "Colonial Goods, Picton," and below, for the common folk, it said, "Grocery." I couldn't restrain an exclamation. Quantum mutatis ab illo. How changed he is from what he was. Lad. Picton looked up and, abandoning his customer, rushed toward me with open arms. Ah, my young friend, my young friend. You are here. How happy I am, how happy. A pretty, plump woman rushed out from behind the counter and threw her arms around my neck. I scarcely recognized her. She had grown so stout. I inquired, "How are your affairs?" Picton had already returned to weighing goods. "Oh, splendid, simply splendid. This year I've made 3,000 francs clear profit." "And what of Latin, Monsieur Picton?" "Ah, good heavens, Latin, Latin. You can't feed yourself on Latin, you know." Dear guests, our literary session for today has concluded. Please stay connected with our salon by subscribing so you won't miss our next gathering. I'll look forward to reading your feedback with great anticipation.